Good morning. This is the Antelope Peak Wilderness area, and I'm going to break here to talk about a lengthy anime series.
The Legend of Galactic Heroes OVA series.
The Legend of the Galactic Heroes is a lengthy anime story that follows the course of future history across parsecs of space and decades of time. It's based on a series of popular sci-fi novels by Yoshiki Tanaka, and is more interested in the political maneuverings and military strategies than in telling a traditional adventure story. And it has a huge cast of characters. As the story begins, the Galactic Empire's hereditary aristocracy has ruled most of human space for 5 centuries. Far away, the Free Planet Alliance was a democratic meritocracy, descended from men who sought freedom from the Empire, though over centuries it became corrupt. When these two stellar nations met again, the Empire branded the Alliance rebels and set about subjugating them again. They've waged a protracted war ever since. Reinhard von Lohengram is a bright new star of the Empire's military. Yang Wenli is the most talented commander of the Alliance forces. These two and their subordinates will fight several battles over the course of the series. But The Legend of Galactic Heroes is a much broader scope than a simple rivalry of these two men. It has a huge supporting cast, and more of the story is told from inside one or the other of these two interplanetary nations than in the direct conflict between Reinhardt and Yang Wenli. In the beginning, Reinhardt's childhood friend, Siegfried Kircheis, is also a master tactician, and his closest advisor in their plan to overthrow the decadent, privileged aristocracy that rules the Empire. They scheme to establish what they see as a better government. Reinhardt has collected many other talented subordinates who, like himself, rose from the lower ranks rather than the nobility. The entrenched nobility, which includes the military officers, resent the upstart's success. Very early, Reinhardt meets and employs Oberstein as his advisor. He's a man who has similar reasons to dislike the established nobility, but who openly subscribes to Machiavelli's theories. For a time, Kircheis and Oberstein tug in different directions on Reinhardt's conscience. Kircheis reminds his friend that their goal was to put an end to the exploitation of the Empire's citizens by the nobles, while Oberstein embraces any means, however ruthless, to achieve victory. Reinhardt will eventually challenge the established order, first politically and then militarily, and a civil war will ensue in the Empire before he can become its new ruler. And then he will set about conquering all of space, including the Alliance.
下がってよい。オーベルシュタインか。私にどんな要件があるのだ。
まず、お人払いをお願いいたします。
ここには3人しかいない。
そう、キルヒアイス中将がおられる。
キルヒアイス中将は私自身も同様だ。
Meanwhile, in the Free Planet Alliance, Yang Wenli has different problems. Despite his great reputation as a commander, he only joined the military to pay for his education, and he'd like nothing better than to retire and return to study history. He has a young ward, Julian Mintz, who begins the show as a child back home, and later decides to follow in his guardian's footsteps and join the Alliance military. But as soon as Yang Wenli managed to secure a sound defensive position against the Empire, Yang hopes for a short period of peace. But the democracy serves as hamstrung by self-serving politicians, and his hopes are dashed as they decide to invade the Empire, expecting the people there to embrace them as liberators. Yang Wenli's warnings about the overextended resources and supply lines go unheeded. Wenli becomes even more popular with the Alliance citizens for his military exploits. When one branch of the military attempts a coup, Yang Wenli defends the government with his own fleet. When the coup is defeated, some of Wenli's supporters think it might be better if Wenli just kept control of the government. But Wenli wants nothing to do with that, and deferentially restores the same corrupt politicians to power again. Despite that, Yang Wenli's popularity with the public frightens the very politicians he's rescued. The contrast between these two opposing societies and their respective champions is stark. The Empire is a very old-world monarchy with everything grandly designed and named in Prussian style. The Alliance is a multi-ethnic democracy with a utilitarian style and names from every imaginable culture. Reinhard chose his path boldly, setting out to reform the empire from a hereditary monarchy to a dictatorship of the fittest, and then to conquer the stars. Wenli is a reluctant hero who accepts his civilian government despite its flaws and has no ambition beyond perhaps achieving a few decades of peace through coexistence if at all possible. At one point, a friend speculates on the outcome of a fair fight between Reinhardt and Wenli. Wenli replies that there can never be an even fight between them. Since Reinhardt rules the empire as well as commanding its fleets, Reinhardt can allocate resources and choose the time and place of battles, such that he's already won before the fighting starts. Still, Wenli repeatedly, deferentially obeys the politicians who get him into this mess.
個人の自由と権利に比べれば大した価値のあるものじゃない。
敵艦隊捕捉。全艦戦闘態勢を取れ。
全艦砲撃準備完了。目標敵艦隊中央。全艦で一点に砲火を集中させる。撃て。
ハイネセンスタジアムに市民が集まり始め、その数がすでに20万人に達しようとしております。なんだと。
The series comprises a whopping 110 OVAs of half an hour each, originally released in 4 sets. Each of these sets ends with a major change in circumstance. I've completely avoided discussing the second half because to do so would be to reveal who wins, who loses, who switches sides, and who dies. The second series opening begins with the observation that in every age and every place, the deeds of men remain the same. While this story is told with star-spanning spaceships, the struggle for military and political power could easily translate to armies in tanks, or on sailing ships, or on horseback. There are frequent references to familiar histories and legends, from Machiavelli to Robin Hood. The scope of the Legend of Galactic Heroes is immense. It's a story of the ebb and flow of a complex history in which there are always half a dozen plots going on. It flips back and forth between the Empire and Alliance, occasionally giving us a battle or two between them, before turning back to their internal problems. A third force, Phazon, led by a guy named Ravinsky, is more of a merchant empire than a nation, gleefully supplying weapons and loans to both sides, and doing their best to keep them fighting. There's the added influence of a religious cult as well. The conflict evolves over decades. The story isn't afraid to change the basic situation of the factions or its characters, nor is it reluctant to kill off major characters. Hardly anyone will get out of this story alive. Battles, war, politics, treason, coups, conspiracies, alliances, and betrayals, assassination, conquests and occupations, kidnappings, civil war, death, tragedy, revolts, victory and defeat, and even a little romance, plus some flashbacks into many of the characters' background. The story has a lot going on. At the same time, the story also spreads its attention over many interesting characters. I can't even mention a small fraction of them here. Let me just cite a couple. Admiral Merkatz is a respected fleet commander of the old empire. When Reinhardt seizes power, Merkatz is reluctantly compelled by a sense of duty to support the old nobles, even though he knows they're fools who meddle in military affairs they don't understand. When those nobles are inevitably defeated, Merkatz is persuaded to seek asylum with his former enemy in the Alliance under young Wenli. He gets to offer droll observations about democracy, as well as battle tactics, eventually joining a rebellion of his own. Merkatz's story weaves through the grander tale of the Legend of Galactic Heroes, as do many other such stories, popping up for an episode or two every now and then fading into the background.
それは一時のこと。ゴールデンバウム王朝を守護する神聖なる使命は何と申されましてもこのわしの頼みでもか。私に全権が委ねられること。もう一つ、命令に背けばいかにやんごとなき身分の方でも軍議に従って処断されるということ。
For all its strength, the series has a number of weaknesses. While its scope is immense and its themes grand and sophisticated, they're often played out with rather simplistic characters. On the one hand, the bad guys, for lack of a better term, are mind-bogglingly stupid. A bad commander is a total idiot who blunders without a bit of subtlety. This makes it really easy for the putative military geniuses to triumph. Bad politicians and nobles are likewise really foolish and transparently self-serving. On the other hand, there are superheroes, people who are just always right and pretty much unstoppable. For example, one of Wenwei's subordinates is Shenkov, the leader of a band of what I suppose are rough and ready space marines. When they get involved in a hand-to-hand fight, they crush their enemies by the dozen. While the series plays out a sophisticated arc of future history, it's often facile in the detailed events that comprise the whole. The Legend of Galactic Heroes has a lot of dialogue. This isn't just where it explains its battle tactics, but also where it reveals its thoughts on politics and the various forms of government. Here, a hereditary autocracy is revealed as bad for its tendency to exploit and grow decadent, but a democracy is seen as equally flawed for its short-sighted politicians who become corrupted by seeking power. Reinhardt installs a Darwinian meritocracy in which capable people seize power, yet finds the constant warfare that it produces a burden on civil society. Many of these philosophical conversations, especially young Wenwei's ruminations on history, are the best part of the series. The animation was reduced to allow the production of so many OVAs. It looked good in its day, especially the artwork in space, but when individual human actions are required, it will often seem a little stiff or stilted. So be it. Its real action is on a grander stage. The artwork has to accommodate many character designs. Not only is there a huge cast, but since the series spans many decades, characters have to age. Children become young men, and young men become old men. Wenwei's ward Julian begins the story as a mere child and grows up into a talented adult commander in his own right. Reinhardt keeps growing his care until he looks like he was attacked by a Bishonen manga. The music is mostly classical, except for the opening and ending themes of each season. That allows for a much more varied soundtrack than you'd expect to hear in a series of this length, so you won't get sick of the background music. In rewatching this, I was struck by how well the 20-year-old series held up. I found the grand scope of its story more than compensated for its exaggeration of individual characters into cardboard archetypes. I give the series 4 stars. It hasn't had a US release, at least not yet. The appearance of some subtitled Harlequin and Galaxy Express 3.9 on streaming sites still holds out some hope it may show up one day. If you're interested in watching, I suggest you begin with the first movie, My Conquest in the Sea of Stars, and then watch the OVAs. Both were directed by Noboru Ishiguro, a veteran of several sci-fi series, and the movie was made expressly to introduce the OVA series. There are also some later prequel and side story OVAs that perhaps I'll discuss another day.
Well, that felt like a long talk. Thanks for watching.